Hello, it's a pleasure to have all of you back in the studio with us. Today I am interviewing Sister Denise on the subject of addictive tech, something that I'm sure all of us can relate to. And we are looking at this subject under the heading of the law of karma, choice and destiny. So Sister Denise, welcome.
Thank you.
Addictive tech is something that every single one of us can relate to. Every single day there are new apps that are invented that make our cell phones all the more harder to put down. Initially, teenagers received a lot of flack for being addicted to their cell phones, but that's no longer the case. Adults are equally addicted. Why is it that we are so addicted to our laptops, our cell phones, our desktops?
There are a number of reasons. One is that it's actually designed that way, to make people addicted. You can thank the inventors of all of this because it is all about how to keep people engaged so that you can take their money. Why it is so successful is because almost everyone is living in a state of anxiety. The way these devices work is they act as a way to make you feel a little bit better in terms of your anxiety because you're doing something. It is the modern version of knitting. You know, when people knit, they're doing repetitive work, but when you knit, you get a sock or a scarf or a sweater or something, so it's useful. When you're just fiddling around with a game, you don't get anything except it drains your energy. When your energy is drained, you're weakened and you're less resilient to the different ways that are on the internet for hooking you in. People are very weak. And so one of the things that people go to a great deal on internet is pornography. And that they do quietly at home or whatever. And this is because their weakness means that they're not capable socially, they're not so able to feel good about themselves. And so sense gratification is a way. The little games that people have is because people are unable to just sit still and be quiet. Their attention span is less and less. It's also connected with sugar addiction.
How so?
When people eat too much sugar, which they do because the food that's available usually has 50 times more sugar than you need. This starts with childhood. And then the child gets attention deficit syndrome. They're unable to concentrate. They're emotionally all over the place, roller coaster and so on. And it's the sugar industry that has infiltrated itself into people's diet because they know that sugar is highly addictive. So anything to do with the production of corn syrup is in everything. Unless you sit down and make your own food, you're going to buy something that's got too much sugar in it. And there are consumer advocacies which challenge this because what is very often written on the packets is not true. Or even if it is true, it's sort of a little deceptive. People don't really quite understand. Even things which are savory are full of sugar, you see. And any kind of soft drink has got a massive amount of sugar, a massive amount of caffeine. So people are manipulated by these things. And when you're made crazy by this sugar, you go right to your device and play out your craziness on that. If you have any kind of emotional upheaval, you will do something to manage that. For many people, you know, they will take drugs, which are expensive and illegal. Your computer is maybe a little bit expensive, but it's legal. And all the things that you can do on it are very harmful, but legal. The social media is very compelling. You can easily get pushed into, you want likes, you want messages, maybe if you feel a bit lonely, you create 5 million friends, none of whom are your friends. It really messes people up quite a bit, and it's predatory in regard to people who are emotionally weak or immature. There's electromagnetic pollution in the air that you can't detect, but this messes up your brain waves, and so as a reaction to that you also go for your device. One of the aspects of addiction is that you are addicted to the thing you're allergic to. And so the thing that you're allergic to is very harmful for you, but you're addicted to it. So you take more and more of what is really bad for you, and it's a downward spiral, and you end up as in any other addiction. The technology behind it all is in the hands of people who really know this stuff, the advertising industry and so on, and they also know how to protect themselves from being called to account. But like any other karma, the balance, when it goes to a certain point, comes the other way, it's going to fly again in the face of those who are creating these things. But before that, there's going to be a great deal of damage done.
One can't help but notice that when you're doing this all day, every day, you're avoiding important aspects of your life and also important aspects of your spirit.
This is exactly the meaning of an addiction. It takes over your life, it causes you to lose your willpower so you can't stop, and it interferes with your responsibilities and so on, so you become delinquent, negligent, and you become a slave.
What is it about the mind that finds the cell phone screen, laptop screen so consuming that we so easily lose ourselves in it? The reason I'm asking this question is because you get individuals who don't have any other addictions except the cell phone addiction.
Well, that's your drug of choice.
Ouch! That's painful to acknowledge. It's your drug of choice.
In previous times, like say from the Second World War, people started smoking because of the war, and it calmed their nerves because there are bombs going off and things being blown up and your friends and relatives being killed, so you get anxious. Then came all the opiates, alcohol has been there for a long time. People say, oh my God, I got to get a drink. Then smoking became difficult to do in public places and so on, so then people shift. And I think that what you mentioned earlier about teenagers getting flack for getting addicted to their devices and so on is that this was offered as the latest greatest drug, and so they go for it. They're from dysfunctional families, which is very traumatic. The education is very stressful. Exams are very stressful. The device is ideal. It takes over. You can Google anything. You can use your device to alleviate all sorts of anxiety-related feelings, which put you into a weakened condition and a worse situation, and you can't put it down.
Literally. Yeah.
You get so many photographs of people in a family, instead of talking to each other, they're all on their... They may be sending messages to each other across the room.
Why is it easier to communicate via a cell phone than in person?
There's one very interesting thing, and that is the icons, the emoticons. You can say a lot with a smiley because you're telling somebody how you're feeling, which you don't know how to articulate in words, but you send somebody a little message of a broken heart and a face crying. It means, I'm feeling like this. And if you would say it in words, it wouldn't go over so well. If you send those 2 little emoticons, immediately the other person knows what you mean. So it's actually quite an advanced mechanism for communicating feelings, because words tend to come more from the intellectual side of things. Very few people are poets, masters of language. There's so many cultures mixed up together and language issues that pictures are a good way to communicate. I mean, what is Chinese is pictograms. Our language, the Roman script and everything, you have to write whole sentences in order to say what you could say in 1 or 2 little pictures carefully put together. It's a good thing. Also, one of the things that is beneficial about it is it's very fast. And you know if somebody got your message, whether they replied or not. You have an indicator that they got it, they read it, or they didn't read it. Communication now is everything instant, immediate, everything like this. High speed everything. Life at the speed of a cow hardly exists. I tell you this expression because 20 years ago I was on top of a mountain in an agricultural area with a project I had to do, and I would see these cows coming in the morning. They do whatever they do all day, and then they go home in the evening, and they're all going slowly, you know. And it was really very nice, because the speed of life that we're in right now makes you crazy. The electronic industry has sort of obligated people to go at very high speed. Television is another important culprit in this, because, I mean, I do video editing, and I cut my cuts according to the rhythm of the brain, so that whenever you see something that I've edited, it corresponds to your soul and the kind of music that it likes. But an advertiser will irritate you until you buy the product, and so they will make cuts at an unsuitable rate, so that it clashes with your brain waves, and this also weakens a person and makes them more likely to be addicted to electronic machineries. And this is designed that way. They know what they're doing, but it's legal, so they do it.
Earlier you mentioned how weak we've become, and that technology is simply an addiction nowadays. So what happens to the human mind now that we have become addicted to our gadgets?
Well, I wouldn't say technology is just another addiction. Technology is very important. We need technology, but we need to be very responsible in how we use it. And we need to be careful, because there are a lot of predators who are very skillfully using it against humanity. But technology is an amazing tool that is essential for us to move towards a very powerful future, but in the wrong hands, it's highly destructive. So it just depends on humanity. And our problem, as you mentioned, is we're weak. And why are we weak? Because we're depleted. Why are we depleted? Because we have been through the wheel of time, the wheel of destiny, for so long that our energy has been used up. And so now, what is recommended is now we have to charge the battery of the soul by connecting with the Almighty, and take that energy that restores us to our former glory.
When one is paying attention to something that's going on the outside, specifically one's gadgets, then it is quite obvious that the mind is anything but still. You spoke of the importance of stillness earlier, of quality time with yourself. How does one return to that?
On one hand, you have to really understand what you're up against. And a lot of people just do not realize, because a lot of it is invisible. A lot of invisible energies going on. Plus this whole thing of settlement of karma. Plus people don't quite understand how weakened they have been. You need to really create some discipline in your lifestyle. You have to really understand yourself and put moments of quiet time into your day. And there will be anything and everything trying to stop that. And you have to develop so much resilience. So many calls are there, calling your attention, calling your time, telling you this is your obligation, that is your obligation, if you don't do this you're missing out, etc., etc. You have to be, like in any other addiction, you have to say no. Leave me alone. I want to be still with myself, and I will choose carefully what I want to do. But you still have to earn a living, you still have responsibilities, you have karmic accounts, and so on and so forth. Bring this energy into your life and say no to whatever you can say no to.
Saying no does not come easily when you're facing an addiction to one of the gadgets, because you convince yourself 5 minutes more.
Exactly.
Yeah?
It's like another glass of alcohol. Just one more cigarette, one more joint or whatever, one more line of cocaine, or I don't know what people do. And it erodes. Addiction is very terrible, because it really takes over your life. And they say in addiction recovery that your substance becomes your wife, your mistress, your mother, your father, your everything, your religion, you know. And the person just goes down and down and down and becomes a slave. And the people who set up these addictive gadgetries knew that, and they want that consequence. And this is why the legal system hasn't caught up with the users of technology to take advantage of people's weaknesses. There was a time when opium was legal, and then it's not legal. There's a time when slavery was legal, then it's not legal. So all of these things, they're legal until somebody makes them not legal. Alcohol is legal. There's a very powerful alcohol lobby, but it's a very dangerous drug. No less dangerous than cocaine or any of those others, because it's very difficult for a weak person to be moderate in their use.
Yeah, and there are very few of us who are moderate in the use of our own cell phones.
Food is a big addiction. Obesity is a big problem. It's addiction to food. And the food industry has created foods which are highly addictive, but totally legal.
Is teaching oneself self-discipline in the use of your gadgets helpful in overcoming one's obsession with it?
I don't think that's the best way. In all of these difficulties that we have to deal with, I find that the best way is to strengthen yourself. Because when you raise your level of consciousness, you fill yourself with power, you're not inclined to go for those things. It's when you're weak that you go for it.
Okay.
So the problem is not really discipline. It's not going to make much difference. Any addict will tell you, oh, I can stop any time. They can't.
So tell us more about filling oneself with power. Walk us through that.
It's a matter of learning the skills of meditation. That involves being very selective in what you think about. It involves study, because you have to stimulate your mind and your intellect. It involves practice. It involves introspection. It involves taking time out, solitude, having very high regard for yourself and your spirit, and realizing that there isn't anything more important than yourself. And then you take advantage of the presence of God and the gifts of God to carry you to this high achievement that you wish for.
That is so beautiful. There's nothing more important than myself. There are some who would consider that line to be selfish or narcissistic. What is the difference between what you just said and narcissism?
You know, narcissism is when a person is in love with themselves and they're just totally blind to certain realities, and they just think, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Okay, very good. You're not. But yourself, that means your soul, that's the part of you that is sacred. You have to honor that. And your relationship with God is that God will make you aware that yourself is sacred, no less than God is sacred. And when one sacred being is in alignment with another sacred being, then something magical happens which destroys the negativity.
That is quite lovely, what you just said about God reminding us that we are sacred beings. It's not just your words, but the energy with which you say it is, wah! Okay, I can feel the applause and the crash of the waves behind me. It's actually quite surreal listening to you say that. And that is a very powerful message from the divine. Why is it so difficult, Sister Denise, for us to grasp our consecrated identity?
Partly people have been trained to feel unworthy, not good enough, you know, all these messages that you get from childhood up until the end of your life, which you then perpetuate by giving to the next generation. And it all comes from the idea that people are basically bad and you have to prove it to them and make them feel bad because then only they'll be good. It's completely illogical mentality, but it's all over the place. And I think the advent of God into the machinery to challenge that is a very extraordinary, I think, intervention.
Okay, so we're about to say goodbye to our audience. Any last words of wisdom before we do that?
I think just to remind yourself that the best thing there is that I am me.
I am me. 3 simple but so powerful words.
Yeah. But until you feel it and realize it and grasp it, that there isn't anything else that you would rather be than what you are. And you embrace all of your foibles and mistakes and whatever, you know, because you are you forever. And when you embrace that, all the split off parts of yourself come together, you become integrated, you become whole, and this is so important.
I appreciate not just your words today, but the 45 years of yogi practice and silence that came with it. That's something that one cannot even place a price on. So thank you. That was a wow for me, brothers and sisters, and I hope you experience what I'm experiencing in the studio today, to be in the presence of a yogi who has soaked herself in the company of the divine is quite an amazing experience, and from her words, Sister Denise invites you to do the same. So look at yourself and ask yourself, are you addicted to any of your devices? If so, you can change that situation and take power from God in order to achieve that. So thank you for joining us. Take care, and goodbye, Sister Denise, and goodbye to you at home. I do hope to see you again soon for the next episode. Take care.